There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. Before we jump in today, I wanted to let you know about another podcast you might enjoy full of sales-focused episodes. If you're a regular listener of B2B Growth, you'll probably enjoy the Modern Sales Podcast with Liston Witherell. Check out their episode, Value-Based Selling Done Right. You can find Modern Sales Podcast wherever you do your listening. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. Today, I'm joined by Dave Cairns. He is the co-founder of CBRE Forward. He's also the SVP of Office Leasing at CBRE Canada. Dave, how's it going today, man?
Yeah, it's good. You are my last appointment of the day before going out to a fun dinner with some clients. So
awesome, man. Well, good stuff. Podcasting, dinner with clients. It sounds like it is a good day, man. Well, we're going to be talking about the network effect and both personally and as an organization, how to effectively build relationships that are going to move your career and your business forward. Couldn't be a more timely subject, with the launch of our founder, James's book, Content-Based Networking, that is all about how you intentionally build relationships. This is just a topic that's so top of mind. So I'm excited to dig into it with you today. That being said, let's give people a little bit of context, man, for folks out there who aren't as familiar with you and CBRE Canada. Give us a little bit of context, background on yourself and what you and your team are up to these days, man.
Sure. So when I got out of university, I played poker professionally for about 5 years. And that was a bit of a nonlinear path. And we're going to talk about nonlinear paths in sales. And after that 5-year period, I took a bit of a leap of faith and I got into commercial real estate brokerage. So I now work for CBRE Canada. We are part of the broader CBRE platform that's one of, it's a Fortune 100 company and global. We cover any type of commercial real estate service that you could literally think of. We cover the whole investment side of the business where we help people buy and sell commercial real estate. We help investors lease real estate, and we also help tenants lease real estate as well. And then we get involved in project management, construction, and we also get involved in workplace strategy where we help companies understand what their future workplace might look like. So it's quite broad. There's a lot going on. My focus is on the transaction side, mostly in a role that we refer to as tenant rep commercial real estate brokerage. So most of my business is representing companies in their pursuits to either renew their lease, expand in our city or across multiple markets, or grow or downsize. So any sort of trigger of their growth or change in headcount is something that I get involved in on the real estate side.
I love it, man. I love to hear that transition too. We're going to circle back to the nonlinear nature of both sales careers, marketing careers, as well as relationships. And I'm just fascinated. I am not a good poker player, so I'll just make sure that we never play cards if we get together anytime in the future, man. But I love to hear that little bit of backstory. So we're going to be talking about a few different things and get into some examples about how you've strategically built relationships for yourself throughout your career and for your organization. The first thing I know you wanted to talk about is the importance of not just the number of relationships, but thinking strategically about what are the important relationships and going deep there. Can you talk to us about the importance of that and some of the lessons you've learned along in your career so far?
Yeah, sure. So when I started out in office leasing, it's another way that we define what we do internally. We help people lease space. I really felt like I had a blindfold on and I was trying to throw a bullseye, basically, right? Like I was sitting in a room, cold calling people, trying to talk to them about a time-based need that I could basically guarantee at least 4 out of 5 people did not have one of those critical time-related, triggers to talking to me. So I was going about it the conventional cold calling way. And frankly, I was getting pretty bored, pretty frustrated, and like not emotionally really doing that well. So I started to just think like, okay, what do I really want to get out of my career? And what I wanted actually is to have deep and meaningful relationships with the people that I was working with. And I understood from my own personal life how much time and energy and, depth that you really need to sort of consider to build a relationship. So I started to think about things a little bit differently after about 1 year being in a sort of business development role. And it was kind of at that time that platforms like LinkedIn were starting to become, they were in the early phases of being relevant, and now they've just completely taken off. And I kind of thought to myself, a way that I can maybe change my path is by trying to find ways to network, organizations to get involved with, places where I can get in front of people in person and show them that I'm someone that can be trusted and that I'm someone that cares about other people's interests. So I started to get involved with an accelerator or an incubator called 111, which houses some of the best software service companies in Canada. And through getting involved with that organization, I not only got to meet all of the companies that were part of this umbrella, which, were 50 or so companies that were part of it, but even more that were part of their broader network. And I also got to know some of the other key sponsors of 111, one of which was Deloitte, who runs a program called the Technology Fast 50. And it actually rolls into a US platform that's called the Fast 500. So by getting involved with 111, I met a lot of people along the way. And I got the opportunity to start to sort of build a bit of a network effect and really ultimately meet a lot of people in person. And it just kind of fast-tracked my ability to start to forge many deeper, I don't say many, less than the cold calling arena, but more deeper relationships.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We've talked a lot on this show, and James's book is all about creating relationships on purpose through content collaboration. Another great thing that, you pick up from your story there is finding the organizations where there's a lot of engagement, finding the platform where there's a lot of engagement, LinkedIn or the industry organization where your buyers are hanging out. And then I think a lot of people take that step as you did, but they don't go with the next step or the intentionality to build deeper relationships. They just kind of approach that with the same mentality that they had on cold calling. Mm-hmm. How many cards can I collect? How many LinkedIn connections? And they don't take that follow-up step of deepening the relationship. What are some of the things that you did after getting plugged into the right place with intentionality to deepen those relationships? And what would you recommend to other folks, man?
So I think it's a couple fold. The first is really you just have to humanize the interaction, right? Ultimately, when you are not in the tribe, you're out of the tribe, and you're not someone that's trusted, and you're not someone that's liked. So I usually will be very open and honest with people about who I am, what my intentions are. I'll share a lot of myself at the beginning of a relationship, and it's a tactic or a strategy, but it's one that has a very benevolent purpose to it. So, I have a bit of an interesting background. And when I get the opportunity to be in front of people, I share of that background with them, right? In the hopes that they will in turn share something a little bit deeper and more intimate with me. And when I say intimate, I mean it in the context of just building a relationship with somebody, right? So I very much take the approach of trying to make my relationships as personal as possible from the beginning. And that involves a level of vulnerability and a willingness to share.
For today's growth story, we'll be talking about Clear Company, a fast-growing talent management platform. Clear Company was acquiring a decent number of users, but they weren't happy with their organic traffic or conversions. Clear Company turned to Directive, the B2B search marketing agency.
to help increase their overall search visibility for core keywords in order to drive more organic traffic and bottom of the funnel leads. After identifying the core target keyword and analyzing the first page of Google results, Directive executed a content and digital PR strategy to rank Clear Company number 1 on the first page of Google for the high intent keyword. In just 5 months, that one piece of content generated 27 demo requests and 1,902 referring domains, an all-time high for Clear Company. If you're looking for results like this with your search engine marketing, there's a good chance Directive can help. Visit directiveconsulting.com and get a free customized proposal. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, absolutely. It takes that willingness. It also, if you think about it, you kind of set the stage. If you lead with that vulnerability, then the law of reciprocity is going to take effect. I'm reading a book right now called Captivate from Vanessa Van Edwards, who heads up the Science of People that does a lot of psychological research. She was a guest on the Customer Experience podcast recently with Ethan Butte, and they talked about this. Hey, when you start off a new relationship, or a Zoom call, or a podcast, or a conversation at a conference, how you start that out sets the tone for that interaction and possibly that relationship. How's your day so far, Dave? You could have said, well, traffic sucked, but you started it out with, hey, I'm looking forward to dinner tonight. And so my mind, what I'm taking from this book and what I took from that other podcast interview is now my mind is more predisposed to look for, okay, what am I looking forward to as well? And so it's kind of a rabbit trail, but to bring that back to the point here of when you lead with being more vulnerable and more open, then people are going to be more open with you.
Yeah, totally. And so I'll add my second point to this, which is that, especially in the business like mine, as I mentioned earlier, 4 out of 5 or more times, one of those time-based needs is not being triggered. So in order to really get deep with people, you have to show them that you are part of their broader tribe, right? So the broader tribe in the context of a lot of my prospects is being someone who is part of Canada's innovation ecosystem, someone who has the agenda of moving that needle forward, right? So part of that, I can obviously talk about my job as a commercial real estate agent and what I do to help companies scale on that front. But another avenue that we undertook is the creation of a content platform called CBRE Forward, which has the purpose of showcasing the stories of Canada's innovation ecosystem. Using CBRE's Fortune 100 brand as a platform to talk about the best leaders in Canada and what they are doing to grow some of the best companies, right? So the creation of that platform and pushing that agenda forward, and making sure that it's clear that it's for benevolent purposes, obviously along with business development purposes, that's really allowed me to get a lot deeper with my prospect base, my clients, industry partners like venture capital or people at Deloitte, anyone who's really part of the ecosystem that I'm trying to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it takes time, right? It takes time to build out that platform. It takes time to invest to whether it's a podcast or, a content platform like you're talking about, to invest the time to have those conversations that are not directly sales related right now. How can we do business? But one of the things I know that you're passionate about in building your network and creating this network effect around yourself and your organization is patience. Can you speak a little bit to how maybe you've seen other people try to go this route, try to implement some of the things that you're talking about, find the right places, but they don't exude a lot of patience in the process and therefore kind of shortchange themselves, right?
Yeah. So not really to go back to poker, but I think it's relevant that I do. I played tournament poker for a living. And basically, the proposition there, statistically speaking, is that 85% of the time you're guaranteed to lose. And only about 1.5% of the time are you going to come in the top 3 players in the tournament. So talk about the need for patience, right? I had a very fortunate kind of path prior to sales that really I didn't realize until I was 3-4 years into this business how much that background served me. And I think also the fact that I was a little bit older, I didn't get into sales at 22, that sort of extra maturation time that I had combined with my previous experience set me up to understand how important patience is. So that's probably the precursor for me. And then I think it's really the understanding of what you mentioned at the beginning. You have to have a philosophical understanding that the path to relationship building is a nonlinear one. And you really just don't know how and when a relationship will become, financially valuable to you in the context of what you do and what you sell. So I just believe in being a good person and thinking about other people first. And along the way, reminding people of what I do with enough frequency that they're constantly thinking about me, right? And that's going to be in every conversation I have, through social media channels, through doing excellent work for the clients that I have. It's very multifaceted. But just to give you an example, there's two young guys that are starting out on our team, and they're going through some of the trials and tribulations of building a network, right? Which is a really challenging and time-consuming exercise that takes a lot of patience. And what I'll do with these guys when we're sitting in a sales training meeting is I'll actually take an example of a referral that I've been given. I'm now in my 8th year in the business, and I will walk them through from the moment that I met that person to the time that they are giving me a referral. And I'll explain all the junctures along the way of the things that I did, how long I waited to ask the person for a lunch because I didn't want to come across as, presumptuous or inappropriate. From there, the connections that I made for that person, adding value to them in a context that was completely unrelated to my business. You know what I mean? And then again, along the way, reminding them of what I do and the types of problems that I solve. And then boom, one day you get an email and all of a sudden you're working on, in my situation, a 10,000 square foot lease that pays a significant commission, right? But it can literally be some cases that you're 7-8 years into a relationship and then boom, all of a sudden you get something, but you got nothing until that point.
Yeah. I mean, you make some really great points about identifying some of the parts of your story that set yourself up for success. I love that you're imparting that to younger salespeople and new salespeople who are just getting into sales. That can be really tough, right? Especially when they've got monthly, quarterly quotas. And, I kind of grew up in sales for 10 years selling office equipment. So that's what people say when you don't want to say you sell copiers and printers, right? And very much like you, I hit sales with, hey, here's your territory, make 50 dials a day, and also a very time-based need. Most people lease that equipment for 4 or 5 years. And so I knew I was calling on people that had a time-based need, like you were talking about. And I didn't like it. I felt I had some of the same angst that you had early on. So I love that you're imparting that to newer salespeople as well. You touched on part of patience that I think is another aspect to effectively growing your network, and that is giving more than you take. You have kind of a benchmark that you put in your mind to think about, okay, this relationship. Tell us a little bit more about that, man.
Yeah, so you're referencing the benchmark, which I can't take credit for. I believe it's a Gary V benchmark from whatever his book was, Jab, 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 Right Hook, or whatever it was, giving 51% or more to the other side of the relationship. So I whether or not you want to use a metric like 51% or not, I think it's really just a mindset of thinking of other people before thinking about yourself. And I think we're human beings. We are mammal brain people in a lot of instances. And it's not to say that I don't get on a track of thinking about what the dollar figure might look like for a potential customer. I'm a human being. I'm thinking about the money that might be on the other side of an opportunity. But every time something like that comes into my brain, I remind myself, think about the other person. Make sure that everything that you're doing is all value-oriented and that you're coming from a place of care, right? Because I think that we fight the uphill battle as salespeople because everyone's been screwed over by a salesperson before, that inherently you're that untrusted person that's outside the tribe. And you can, as quickly as you can get into the tribe, you can be out of the tribe, right? So you have to continue to just constantly take that philosophy and approach to every interaction that you have.
Absolutely. Sometimes you can be kicked out of the tribe even more quickly than you gained your spot into it, man. So the way I've kind of taken notes on this, Dave, are 5 specific tips that come out of the tips that you've been sharing on building your network, sharing yourself and being vulnerable with the people that you're trying to build relationships with early. Number 2, identify how you can become part of the broader tribe. 3, you've got to exude a lot lot of patience, slow play it, right? For another poker term we're going to throw in there. just sneak that one in there. So that's number 3. 4, recognize that relationships are nonlinear. That really kind of ties right off of the patience aspect and allows you to invest and fully take on that mindset of number 5, which is give more than you take. Because when you do that and you realize that not every action, not every relationship is that immediate return on investment, but it is the long game. It is the slow play that is going to pay dividends in the long run.
Yes. So I think the 6th is that you don't want to have too much volume to your sales practice because you can't go deep if you have too much volume. But you need to make sure that you have enough volume so that, you don't just have one person that might give you a lead 7 years later. Ideally, you have quite a few of those people in your network, right? So I think that you have to just be constantly in pursuit of new deep relationships, the pursuit of starting new deep relationships.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, man. I mean, I think about that just to kind of like bring it down to boots on the ground. I think about, okay, LinkedIn. I pretty much accept every LinkedIn connection request because that volume, who knows what it could lead to, and it's not going to cost me much other than, hey, they're going to maybe send me spam right after, and which archive the conversation and whatever, right? But that's where, just an example of where, okay, I'm going to skew quantity there, but then when I pick out what events am I going to go to? Where am I going to deepen relationships with the top 10, 20, 30 people in my network over the next year? I'm going to put a lot of thought and intention there. And so figuring out where do you go deep and where do you also balance quantity with that, I think that's applicable for marketing too, right? We're talking about sales and marketing, all sorts of good stuff here today, man. Dave, if anybody listening to this is like me and has become a fast fan of yours, what's the best way for them to reach out and stay connected, man?
Oh, well, thank you for that. The best place, obviously, to catch up with me is on LinkedIn. So David Cairns, Cairns. That's my name. You can find me there. And then otherwise, it would be great if you went over to CBRE Forward, CBREforward.com. And if you are anyone in Canada that's listening and you are in need of office space, there is a nifty link on that page that you can click to connect with our team.
I love it. Dave, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, man.
Yeah, pleasure. Appreciate it.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.